As a lifelong enjoyer of the Xbox consoles, it pains me to say this, but I do believe it's true. I think the Xbox brand that we know and love is dead or is going to be dead very soon, and I've outlined 5 reasons why I think this is the case. Let's jump into it. Reason number 1, they kill studios. Now, this one's probably gonna be fresh in a lot of our minds because as of the recording of this video, we actually learned May 2024 that Microsoft was going to close 4 of their different studios in their holdings. And while that doesn't seem like a lot of loss for a company as gigantic as Microsoft, I mean, they own dozens and dozens of studios across the world. Still, 4 studios being shuttered all around the same time, that's a major loss for this industry. And while you might not be familiar with all of these studios and all of the games that they developed, I mean, these are studios that had an impact on this industry as a whole and made some really fantastic games. I mean, we're talking studios like Tango Gameworks, which, if you're not aware, they made the Evil Within games, the excellent survival horror games that I actually played the second one and was taken quite a bit by surprise. Really enjoyed that game a lot. They also made Hi-Fi Rush, which did really well critically and was viewed as kind of a bright spot in Microsoft's more recent catalog. So for them to be closed down is such a major bummer and such a huge loss. We also lost Arcane Austin in this round of closures, and if you guys aren't aware, I do want to make sure people are aware. We did not lose Arcane as a whole. Arcane had a few different studios in different areas. They also had Arcane Lyon, which is probably their biggest and most well-known studio. They made games like Dishonored and Deathloop. But the thing is, Austin also made some really great games. We're talking the 2017 Prey. We're also talking Redfall. And while maybe Redfall didn't do super well in terms of critic and commercial success, it was a little bit mixed. Still, to see a studio like this get taken from us is such a major bummer. It's definitely not the first time Microsoft has done this sort of thing, and I'm going to get into that more and elaborate in this next reason. Reason number 2, studios kept around, just churn out product. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, it's pretty simple. Basically, if you look at Microsoft's catalog of studios, and of course there are exceptions, especially with the more recent acquisitions, but if you look at the ones that have been around, you start to notice a pattern that a lot of these studios are one-trick ponies, or basically have just been making essentially variations on the same game for a long time. I mean, if you look at Turn 10, for example, if you're into the Forza Motorsport franchise, Turn 10 literally just makes that and nothing else. That is all that they are asked to do by Microsoft, and that's all they're ever probably going to do. Same with the Coalition. All they do is make the Gears of War franchise, and that is it. That is all they do. Same thing goes for, obviously, 343, which is probably the prime example of this. Obviously, Halo being the face of the Xbox brand, really like the mascot of Xbox even to this day. They obviously took the helm from Bungie, and all 343 does is make Halo, and that is it. Rare is a really interesting example I also wanted to touch on here. Rare is fascinating for a multitude of reasons. First of all, if you guys are not aware of Rare, they were really well known during the NES, Super Nintendo era, and they really came into their own on the N64. They were known as basically like a second-party Nintendo developer. They were absolutely crushing it in the N64 era. I mean, we're talking games like Donkey Kong 64, Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, just banger after banger. These were critical successes, they were commercial successes, they were huge. Everybody knew the name of this company, and they were a really respected developer in the space, and they were doing a lot for the industry. I think Microsoft saw this, and when they went to make the original Xbox, they figured, how can we get some of that like social cachet? And one of the ways they did that was by buying out Rare and basically making them a second-party Microsoft developer. In the OG Xbox era, they really didn't seem to know what to do with them. We got grabbed by the Ghoulies, which was kind of an interesting game, but not incredible by any stretch of the imagination. And we also got the Conquer Live and Reloaded, which was essentially a remake of Conquer's Bad Fur Day on N64 with an altered multiplayer mode, some online. You know, these games did all right, but it felt like Rare didn't really know what they were doing with Microsoft, and they hadn't really found their footing in the company. And I would argue that they kind of had a second renaissance in the 360 era. We got games like Cameo Elements of Power, which launched with the system. We also got, of course, Viva Pinata, which was a great game. Perfect Dark Zero, which was, a bit of a misfire, but hey, they were trying stuff. Overall, I think they did really well during the 360 era. We got a Banjo-Kazooie sequel as well. Unfortunately, things waned very quickly when leadership at the Xbox team changed in the late era of the 360. Don Matrick came in. We had the Kinect that was trying to get the casual market going. Essentially, they turned Rare kind of into just like a Kinect dev, which was incredibly sad to see. They were basically just making Kinect sports there for a little while, and it felt like a waste of a really talented dev. And of course, they have come back and done games like Sea of Thieves, which has done extremely well commercially, critically. A lot of people like that game, but you look at it and it just does not feel like Rare. It feels once again like a Microsoft-owned studio that is just phoning it in and making a product that is going to sell and basically be kind of a money churner. I feel like that's what happens with a lot of Microsoft-owned studios. Reason number 3, Microsoft presents no incentive to upgrade one's hardware. Now, this one's a bit of a double-edged sword for Microsoft because I kind of see what they're going for. They're treating the Xbox line of consoles as kind of a holistic ecosystem. I think the idea really is to be able to basically unplug one Xbox and put a newer, higher-powered one in its place and basically have the exact same experience. While it does make things very easy for the average consumer, it means those of us that have been longtime Xbox fans like myself, the last system I bought was a base Xbox One in 2013. In fact, I got it on launch day, which I have mixed feelings about. I kind of wish it was something more like the 360, but hey, what can you do? I had my fun with it, but I still use the base Xbox One for my Xbox playing. I've really felt no real strong reason to upgrade, and that's for a few different reasons. Mainly is that everything can be played on it, right? If you look at games that are being released, there are very few that will not run even on a base Xbox One. Now, obviously, performance is going to be worse, but to me, as long as it plays, I'm good. I'm fine with keeping the old hardware around and using it as long as I possibly can. There's games like Flight Simulator that only work on an Xbox Series X or S, but like, am I gonna play Flight Simulator? Probably not. Big releases still. Gears 5, Halo Infinite. I mean, these are giant releases that Microsoft is known for. All of them will work on a base Xbox One. Now, they might not look the prettiest, but they still function. It'll be interesting to see with the newer batch of releases coming out. I mean, we're talking Elder Scrolls 6, the new Indiana Jones game that's supposed to come out. Those are probably also going to require you getting the new hardware, but the fact that it's 2024, we are 4 years into this generation, and there is almost no compelling reason to upgrade hardware is very, very telling. Reason number 4, physical game preservation on Xbox is an absolute nightmare. Now, one of the issues with releasing games in the modern way that Xbox does and making sure that those games can play on hardware as far back as the base Xbox One from 2013, over a decade ago, is the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of different variations of hardware that these games are being played on now. Obviously, different hardware needs different optimizations for these games. Microsoft has dubbed this practice smart delivery. Essentially, what happens when you buy a physical game is that it syncs with the servers, the Xbox Live servers, and depending on the hardware you have, it will download the build that will run best on your Xbox through Xbox Live, which sounds great on paper, and to the average consumer, I imagine is fantastic, very convenient. But what they don't tell you, and you may have caught it, I said the word download. In a lot of cases, literally, these discs will only have one version of the game on them, and a lot of times it is the base Xbox One version of the game. These are huge releases. We're talking games like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. We're talking games like Sonic Frontiers. There are tons of games that are marketed as being playable on Series X and S and will only have the Xbox One build on the disc. To get the Xbox Series X version, you have to be online and it has to download from the internet. It is not on the disc whatsoever. And this makes preservation an absolute nightmare. To be fair, I get why they would put the Xbox One version on the disc. That is, kind of a backup, a failsafe, right? That'll play on everything. So I get why they put that version on, but I don't see why they don't just release multiple discs or try to cram more onto a single disc. It just seems like in the long run, this is really going to make a mess of things. Again, while I see the concept and the convenience factor of this method, I think it's a really big misstep, and it's something that not enough people are talking about. And reason number 5, backwards compatibility on Xbox is unfortunately finished. Now, before we get into this reason proper, I do want to start by saying that I've been championing the Xbox brand. I have been giving them lots of praise over the years, and honestly trying to spread the word about how backwards compatibility works on the One and the Series, because I think they have such a good system here, and we'll talk a little bit why it's kind of a bittersweet situation. Microsoft has been doing an absolutely bang-up job with backwards compatibility, and it's unfortunate to see it end. They announced in November of 2021 that was the last batch of OG Xbox and 360 games they were going to make work on the One in the Series. Basically, their reasoning was that they couldn't really license any more games. They reached the limits of what was legally possible. And the reason for that is the way backwards compatibility works now is that when a game's put on the Xbox Live service so you can download it, they also have to be sold on the digital storefront. So any game that is backwards compatible is being sold in a modern way, which means publishers are involved, money's involved. So yes, there's limits to what can be done. That's what I use my Xbox One for the most part, is playing OG Xbox and 360 games. We got over 600 360 games that work on the One in the Series, which is fantastic. I mean, that's like a quarter of the library more. There were about 2,000 games for the 360. And Xbox Original, unfortunately, only had about 63, which is still a good chunk. You know, there were almost 1,000 games in the OG Xbox library. Luckily, the titles they focused were like really solid and ones that probably a lot of people still want to play today. That being said, it's another thing that, you know, Xbox had this good element that was so fantastic. You know, even that has come to an end. Obviously, the games that work now will always work, but the fact that we're not going to get any more games functional on the new systems is definitely a bummer and makes me a little sad. And with that, that's my 5 reasons for why I think the Xbox brand is dead. I had a really hard time making this video because as somebody that considers myself a longtime Xbox fan, it's just a shame to see where this company has gone. I mean, if it weren't for Xbox, I honestly don't know if I'd be doing what I do now on a daily basis, making videos, streaming, talking about video games, sharing my love and passion of video games with others. I mean, the Xbox was my first console, the original Xbox. I got it with my brother. We had so many great fun memories during our childhoods playing that system together. We then moved on to the 360. We got introduced to online gaming with Xbox Live during that generation. I met lifelong friends by playing games of, you know, Halo Reach and ODST and, you know, and then even the Xbox One era with the reveal that was super botched and the DRM policies and all that they had to reverse. I still supported them through that. I got my Xbox One day one. I had some great fun memories with that system as well. Games like Dead Rising 3 and Need for Speed Rivals. And unfortunately, I don't see myself, if they do release another system, I don't see myself buying it. And I honestly, in a sense, I'll be surprised if they do release another console. I get the feeling that they really just want to focus on Game Pass, and they would be totally content if they could get Game Pass on the Switch and PlayStation consoles. That might be it for them as a hardware manufacturer. It's just sad to see the Xbox brand kind of turn into a shell of what it used to be. So with that, guys, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say down below. Are you guys in my camp? Do you feel kind of jaded by the whole Xbox brand at this point? Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, take care. That was wordy as hell. That was wordy as hell.